Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al-Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Western and Arab diplomats I've spoken with concerned that Netanyahu will use statehood recognition as a pretext for annexing parts of the occupied West Bank. Finance Minister Smotrich is among those demanding annexation as a response, as is far-right politician Itamar Ben-Gvir, who said there should be a, quote, complete dismantling of the Palestinian Authority led by Mahmoud Abbas.
Welcome back to the Al-Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. The United Nations General Assembly kicks off in New York on Tuesday, with the historic participation of the Syrian President, the Gaza War, Palestinian statehood, and sanctions on Iran set to dominate much of the discussion. France recognized a Palestinian state on Monday, as it hosted a conference on the two-state solution alongside Saudi Arabia, a day after the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia did the same. Expanding recognition of Palestinian statehood in the West has been a key goal of the Palestinian mission to the UN for years, but is likely to draw a rebuke from the United States and Israel. The U.S. canceled visas for Palestinian officials ahead of the General Assembly, including that of Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, and Israel has vocally criticized the recognitions. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to address the forum on Friday, and the Israeli invasion of Hamas-controlled Gaza City is ongoing. Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa arrived in New York on Sunday and will become the first Syrian head of state to address the General Assembly since 1967. Sharaa's visit is part of a remarkable transition the former al-Qaeda member is leading. On Monday, Sharaa spoke at an event with former U.S. Army General Michael Petraeus, whose forces he once fought against in Iraq. Later that day, he held talks with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Sharaa's presence at the UNGA is not without its complications, and he's actually still under UN sanctions for his leadership of the jihadist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham during the Syrian civil war. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian will address the assembly just weeks after the UK, France, and Germany, the so-called E3, initiated snapback UN sanctions against Iran, accusing them of failing to return to compliance with the 2015 nuclear agreement. Negotiations aimed at getting Tehran to scale back its nuclear program have thus far failed to stave off the snapback mechanism. In this episode, we hear from Al-Monitor's Elizabeth Hagedorn in New York. Elizabeth takes us through the ramifications of the Palestinian statehood push, whether Sharaa can further break Syria's isolation at the General Assembly, and the latest on negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. Hope you enjoy. Elizabeth, welcome back to the Al-Monitor Brief.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me. Pardon the noise. I'm here at the Media Filing Center in the UN headquarters, where reporters from all around the world are here to cover the two-state summit that's ongoing right now.
On that note, let's delve right into the issue of Palestinian state recognition at this year's General Assembly. What do you think is the significance of these recognitions of a Palestinian state at the forum, and could they have any effect on conditions on the ground or U.S. policy towards the conflict?
It's a good question, Adam. I think you have Western powers like France and Canada and Australia endorsing statehood does send a powerful message about Palestinian right to self-determination and underscores the frustration of much of the international community after nearly 2 years of war in Gaza. It's also likely to further diplomatically isolate Israel, as well as the United States, which is now the only permanent Security Council member that does not recognize Palestine, following recognition from its close allies, France and the United Kingdom. To your question, I think as it stands, these announcements are unlikely to alter events on the ground in the West Bank, where Israel is expanding settlements, or in Gaza, where the offensive in Gaza City is poised to further increase the Palestinian death toll, already in the tens of thousands.
You wrote in your analysis recently that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu might escalate the situation in response to these recognitions of Palestinian statehood. Why and how might he go about doing that?
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu has pledged to retaliate for what he considers to be a gift to Hamas, this wave of recognition. And he's vowed a response in the coming days. He's scheduled to speak on Friday, where I'm sure we'll hear from him on this issue. Western and Arab diplomats I've spoken with are concerned that Netanyahu will use statehood recognition as a pretext for annexing parts of the occupied West Bank. That's the territory that Israel captured from Jordan in the 1967 war. Finance Minister Smotrich is among those demanding annexation as a response, as is far-right politician Itamar Ben-Gvir, who said there should be a, quote, complete dismantling of the Palestinian Authority led by Mahmoud Abbas. There has also been talk of annexing the Jordan Valley. That's an area of the West Bank alongside Jordan. Any attempt to annex portions of the West Bank would draw international backlash. The UAE, which is one of the few Arab countries that maintains diplomatic ties with Israel, says annexation would be a red line for Israel's continued reintegration into the region. And European states would also likely retaliate in some form, possibly with sanctions or other restrictions on trade with settlements in the West Bank.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Elizabeth Hagedorn after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al-Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al-Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
Okay, we're back. Elizabeth, Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara's visit to the UN is obviously historic. He's the first Syrian head of state to address the General Assembly here in New York in decades. What do you think are his goals at this year's assembly, and are these attainable?
Well, first and foremost, this is an opportunity for Shara to introduce himself on the world stage. This is someone who less than a year ago was controlling a sliver of northwest Syria as the head of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and now he stands at the helm of the entire country as Syria's president. In his remarks later this week to the UN Security Council, I expect he'll outline his vision for a new Syria and call for more international support, including through sanctions relief and humanitarian aid. His visit comes as Syria and Israel inch closer to a U.S.-brokered security arrangement aimed at easing tensions along their border. This was the subject of conversation during Rubio's meeting with Shara here today in New York. They also discussed efforts to combat the Islamic State in Syria and locate Americans who were imprisoned by the Assad regime.
And finally, you've done a lot of reporting on the Iran snapback sanctions and the negotiations over their nuclear program. What should we expect this week, or what should we watch out for with regards to Iran and the nuclear issue?
The UN summit comes days before the expected return of United Nations sanctions on Iran due to its continued nuclear activity. Those so-called snapback sanctions will be reimposed at the end of the month unless the UN Security Council agrees to extend sanctions relief. And on Friday, we saw the Council fail to pass a resolution that would have prevented the return of these sanctions. Iran's president and other senior officials are here in New York this week and will be making their case for sanctions relief. Iran's foreign minister has already sat down with the head of the UN's Atomic Energy Agency, his name is Rafael Grossi, to discuss cooperation or lack thereof over Iran's nuclear program.
Elizabeth, thanks a lot for your time, and we look forward to more of your reporting from the General Assembly.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks for listening to the Al-Monitor Brief. Be sure to follow Al-Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East. Until next time, I'm Adam Lucente.